was designed about 15 years ago, specifically for my friend Valerie Conchella. And I had basically built these models over the years for people like yourself that had come to me and said, hey Larry, I'm thinking about going to grad school, or I'm just going through different types of models. And as I was doing it, I was like creating these cognitive imageries, and I was creating a story around these, this advice. And it wasn't until Valerie came to me, who became the president of Commercial Real Estate Women, which is one of the top women's real estate organizations in the United States. And I was asked to actually be on the board of directors, the only man to ever be invited to sit on the board of directors of an all-women's professional real estate organization, which I thought was pretty amazing. So she asked me to coach her, which I was pretty, I really appreciated, but I hadn't really, coached anybody of that magnitude or that level. So I spent 2 weeks putting this all together, and then went back to her and presented it to her. And then I said, this is so powerful, what I have to do is institutionalize it. So I basically went to all of my classes that I was teaching, so roughly 3 courses, 60 students. And I made an effort to meet with each and every one of my students for at least 2 hours to go through this model, write out at least 20 pages of notes for them, and hand this to them as their long-term academic and professional strategic plan. And then be able to perfect the articulation and communication of this system to you. Okay. So the first model is the nomenclature of knowledge. It's basically a social science-based system, okay, of institutions of knowledge. Okay. Because to understand how the world really works, and if you listen to Kyle Bass and other individuals, this is what they totally know. They know that to be able to forecast the value, the direction, and the magnitude of the value of equity, either it be stocks, real estate, or your own human equity, is you have to understand first the accounting, both the financial and the managerial accounting. And from the accounting rolls up into the financial statements and the financial ratios that then you use to go out and solicit lenders, private, public equity, public-private debt, the venture capitalists, Series A rounds. You need to be able to show the financials, and you got to be able to show the business plan, and you got to be able to show the capabilities of the individuals to be able to execute, or else they're not going to give you the money. Finance is related to the economics. You have to understand the macroeconomics, the microeconomics. You got to understand fiscal policy, and you got to understand monetary policy. And within each one of these institutions of knowledge, these are basically equations, regression equations, that have at least 50 variables within each of the equations. So what's amazing about the system, and I'll get to the whole thing in a second, is you basically have 10 equations with 50 variables in it. That's a 10 by 50 factorial. The computers only now in history, Manassas State focused, right now, can now actually attempt to solve this equation simultaneously. We're now getting to the point of quantum computing and the ability to store and process data at the levels to actually solve the simultaneous equation solution currently. But there's one machine that can actually solve this equation simultaneously currently, and that's you. That's the human brain. The human brain is the most powerful supercomputer ever designed. It's not a physics-based model, it's a biological-based model. And you transact up to 1 trillion transactions per day. Just the ability to communicate through language, based on Chomsky's work in linguistics at MIT. He basically came up and said that human beings are extremely powerful individuals just through the process of language and communications. And just communicating in language and your thoughts basically are 1 trillion transactions per day. So it's your brain that has the ability to process this and actually solve it, and solve the dependent variable of the magnitude and the direction of the value of the equity. You have to understand political science and the policy formulation process. How is policy actually formulated? Does it come up from the people, through the legislature, or initiated through the executive branch? And once it's signed into law, it's then administered through the public administrative process, or the bureaucracy, that has intended and unintended consequences. And these consequences could have positive externalities, negative externalities, but they're going to change your behavior to act in a certain way. If you don't act a certain way, you're going to be penalized. If you act a certain way, you will be rewarded. So you have to understand the policy process. And right now we're at an existential crisis in the United States. I mean, democratic capitalism is basically being destroyed, and it's been devolving and it's been deconstructed by neoliberal ideologies since the 1990s, and it's only accelerated since the financial crisis. Do you even understand that? Most people don't even understand that, and they don't even care, because they live at a certain level, but they won't even know it until it hits them. But my clients want to know about it. My institutional clients want to know about deconstruction in democratic capitalism, because their assets, they're investing for a 30, 40-year period, and they want to know the impact of climate change on their portfolio in the next 30 to 40 years, and how they should be shifting their portfolio on a global basis across different asset classes. And then philosophy. Our system here in the United States is based on Western philosophy. Jacques Rousseau, John Stuart Mills, Adam Smith, the founding fathers, basically designed the democratic capitalistic institutions that basically govern our society. If you go other places in the world, it's different. There are different systems that are in place, both based on either philosophy, secular philosophy, or through theology or theocratic systems that basically dictate. Asia is very different. So is the Middle East. You know, the theocracies are the governing structures that basically determine how the economy and the culture is actually run. And if you're going to go global, you've got to understand that. So to be able to solve this problem simultaneously, because it's so intense, you have to have not only the psychology, but the sociological standards. And we actually have those. If you look around you right now, you know, we're pretty civilized, we're all educated, we all can learn, we're in a peaceful environment, which is totally conducive to learning, and probably in the most productive environment for learning than any other place, if you really think about it, right, is really the environment. And also, it allows us to be able to learn and communicate, for even now, more so on a global basis, is the standardization in linguistics and language. English is the language of business. You can communicate with anybody in business on a global basis because of English is the standard in business. And if you go around and you look how people dress on a global, you know, basis, based on, you know, corporate and other socioeconomic elites, we all kind of dress the same too. So there's basically a cultural standard, you know, across the globe. Yes, cultures are distinct in certain ways based on history and norms, but if you really look at people of our generation, we all basically dress the same too. We talk the same, and we communicate with each other too. And communication, coupled with technology and telecommunications, with your cell phone, give me your cell phone for a second. Your cell phone now is basically, this is a supercomputer in your hand. It allows you to network and do things with product attributes that have never been done before in history prior to 1990. So you being enabled with these technologies makes you the most powerful generation on earth. The most powerful generation. So therefore, the responsibility for people who own such awesome power, coupled with education and knowledge, have the power to wield either evil or good. And that will be your existential decision that you will have to make within your career, is do you use your power for good or evil? And if you just look at the guys in Washington, we know how they've used the technology in social media over the last 10 years especially. And then if you want to analyze civilization based on advancement, most advanced civilization will focus on the architecture within their central business districts. So architecture is really the reflection of civilization in advancement. And you can go anywhere in the world. You can go to Tokyo, New York, Boston, San Francisco, LA, Sao Paulo, Seoul. It doesn't matter. You go to any of those countries, it's all going to be focused on the central district, and the reflection of the architecture will be the reflection of the advancement of their society. So the major takeaway from this is it's a machine learning language. It's AI now. It's big data. It's basically how the world works from a social science-based complex system. It's a complex system of institutions and equations. It's basically the operating system now It's your operating system, okay, that will help you to be able to move forward effectively. There are variables in one model that are also in the other, so it's dynamic and it's continuous. It's multi-institutional, you have to solve the equations simultaneously. It's multiple regression and big data, and it's biological processing with infinite storage and processing capabilities. And you've learned a lot of this in your liberal arts education. And that's the beauty of liberal arts education, and that's the beauty of a business degree. Because basically you learn a lot of the other stuff. And you will use everything that you learn in your courses, in your program. You will use everything at some point in your career if you learned it. If you didn't learn it, you might have to go back and learn it. But you don't know what you don't know, unfortunately. That's why school, the 4 years in your undergrad and then the years in your graduate program are so important to gain all the knowledge that you need to be able to make good decisions decisively. The second model is an organizational diagnostic and scan. When you walk in, when you meet anybody or you go for an interview or you go work for a company, first thing you need to ask is, what's the company, who is the individual, where did they come from, where's the background, what's the history, what's the industry, what's the product, who's the customers? Start asking all these questions. And then what's the organizational structure of the company based on their industry and their culture? And what are the comparative advantages and disadvantages of the organizational structure? And how can you add value within the position, the division, and the company, and be able to articulate that value proposition constantly in the company and everybody else that you meet. If you can't, you're not leveraging your human capital. You're not going to make it. You're going to be held back. Or you're going to be put into a silo somewhere in some myopic position, in some myopic state, and you're going to be destroying your human capital and your human equity instead of building it and accumulating it effectively. So you got to understand where these people are. Are they at the virtual level of the organization? Do they work in teams across different functions of the organization? Is that where they want to be? Or are they in higher levels of responsibility within the organization, overseeing other individuals? Because people down here talk and act and react, and the psychology and the culture are different than people who are working up in the bureaucratic and the mechanistic forms of the organization. And if you have an objective, if you have a goal to move up into the organization, well, you better figure out where you are, and you better start navigating how you're going to make it up through the organization, and not only be able to talk to people across the organization in the virtual realm, but how do you talk about people going up the organization? Because the further you go up the organization, the less patience they are going to have in basically translating their language and explaining things to you. You talk to a marketing person, you got to be talking in their language. You talk to a finance and accounting person, you got to be talking in their language. They're not going to translate for you. And if they do have to translate, they're going to get extremely impatient, and they're not going to work with you. They'll find somebody else who understands and has really learned the language and the culture within their business degree. So you have to be able to plot. What's going to happen is maybe you do have upward, aspirations to move up within an organization. So you got to be able to understand where you are and how you're going to plot. It's not going to be direct. You might have to go lateral before you go up. You may run into a glass ceiling based on gender and race and GPA and what school you went to, and other things that are controllable or uncontrollable. And if you do have these aspirations and you do run into a glass ceiling, you got to move and you got to get out of the way so you can continue to move forward. Because if you get stuck, you're wasting your time and you're actually destroying your human capital in the process. So the major takeaways just from that is you got to do a scan of the organizational structure right off the bat. You got to understand the organizational design based on industry, and you got to be able to look at the comparative advantages and disadvantages of the organization and articulate to the people in the company what value you can bring constantly within the position, division, and the company. You got to determine the location. You got to be able to determine the value that you can add. You got to understand how to navigate, to arbitrage your human capital, and how to build and accumulate human capital and human equity, and then leverage it. You got to be willing to move, and you got to be willing to execute flawlessly, constantly. If you don't move and you don't execute flawlessly, you're going to probably make mistakes. You got to be able to communicate vertically and horizontally within the organization, and you got to be willing to go at any point in time. Where there's an opportunity that's presented to you, you assess the risks and returns, and then you move and you take the opportunity and you keep going. The third model is a strategic plan. You got to have a plan. A lot of my students don't have a plan. They're totally reactive. I don't have a plan. And then so that when things come to them, they're reacting and they're wasting time because they don't have basically a planning structure in place to be able to guide them on how to make decisive decisions. 30, 40 years is going to go like that. I see it all the time. God, I really wish I would have done that when I had time. I'm 45 years old now. I got 3 kids in a house, and I'm settled into my position. I can't go back and do what I wanted to do in my 20s and 30s because I'm 45 now, and I have too many responsibilities to do what I want to do. So moving forward within your career, you're going to have competing interests that are going to take time. You're going to have to decide on what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice. It might be friends, family, sports, music, job, school, whatever. Your opportunities within your career are going to be determined on what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice. And what I found out is by laying out my plan and moving forward with my plan, because nobody understood what I was doing. 2 years undergrad, 5 masters, doctorate degree, teaching 25 years, working 25 years. Everybody was like, oh my God, what are you doing? I don't even understand what you're doing. It's like, well, I want to be a financial engineer. What's a financial engineer? I want to be a financial economist. What's a financial economist? It's like, oh, that's all I hear you saying is school. It's like, you must love school. It's like, yes, I love school. I don't love school. School's the tool that basically got me to where I wanted to be. So I basically told all of my friends and everybody what they wanted to hear. I like school, and move on. So I gave them what they wanted because they were getting in my way to becoming successful. It was a waste of time. So your bachelor's degree is basically the ticket that's going to get you into the ball game. It's not going to get you onto the field, which is where you want to be as a professional, but it gets you into the game. Once you get into the game with a bachelor's degree, that could take 4 to 7 years, maybe even 10 years, depending on your economic situation and your personal situation. You're in this bardo state, this interim state. This is where you really accelerate in the first 5 to 7 years. If you're an accountant, you do the CPA and you go to the Big 4. If you're on the finance side, you do the CFA. You get your Series 7, 66, long-term care, insurance, real estate license, whatever. If you want to do FinTech and IT, you basically get your MS, your Microsoft, your Salesforce, Oracle, C++, Python, R, all those certifications, all of the licensing to be able to do what you need to do. Then you position yourself. You might even have to go back to remediate some of your courses to basically position yourself to get into the best school and the best program that you can get into. Because if you can get into the Ivy League, you're set. Because the alumni around the Ivy League totally takes care of you. You will never fail if you go to an Ivy League school. And it's not a matter of paying for it, because the amount of money you pay for the Ivy League education doesn't even freaking matter, because you saved your money in here. You got yourself set up, maybe you got parents and other stuff that'll contribute. You've lined yourself up to get the loans. You got into the best program, and within the first year you got this killer internship at one of the top tech or the top investment banking firms. And you negotiated a job upon graduation, and a takeout of the loans, and a takeout of the last year within your program. Done. So you just negotiated basically your Ivy League education, the $150,000 that you're going to need. So it's not the money. It's getting into the best program. That's all that matters. Once you graduate, you're in this associate apprentice program for 3 to 5 years underneath an EVP or a managing director. Because the managing director and the EVP want to go up into the C-suite. So if you can position yourself correctly, what happens is these people blow out, you move right up into their position. Now you're an EVP and a managing director. And then people move up, they could spend 10 to 20 years up there. But you got to have a plan, okay? You got to have a plan. And this process of planning could take, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. You're going to be up to about 25 years old. You're basically just getting all your stuff, positioned. 25 to 35 is like you kind of got your shit together. And then 35 to 45 is prime time. you're executing on all 12 cylinders. And then 45 to 55, you do what you want. 55 to 65, you are what you want. And then 65 to 75, you're doing whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You're totally self-actualized at that point. And here's the sad part for a lot of my students that I'm really concerned about, is they don't have any planning, okay? Particularly when it comes to mortality risk. You're gonna basically work for 30 to 40 years. Let's say you make on average $100,000 a year. To replace that income is between $3 and $4 million. So basically you right there sitting in your seat right now are worth $3 to $4 million. Okay? So how do you hedge off mortality risk? Because we're all gonna die at some point in time. But some of us are gonna die sooner. Either diabetes, with amputation, you could be Crohn's disease, could be cancer, you could get in a car accident, you could even be murdered. You laugh, my sister was murdered. Okay. So, I've had other people who have died in my family. So it's from personal experience, so this is like this is the real stuff. So my recommendation to you guys, because your family is relying upon you, okay? They're looking to you to basically take care of them in their 80s and 90s. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into your education and into you to get you here to where you are. And they want you to be with them for the next 30 to 40 years. But if you're not there, if something was to happen to you, at least you have the $1 million or the $2 million worth of life insurance to take care of your brothers and sisters and their kids and your family to make sure that they were left better off, in the long run. How much does it cost for $1 million worth of life insurance for 30 years? $500 a year for you. $500 a year for 30 years for $1 million. Life insurance is the most brilliant financial product ever devised. Where can you wield or lease $1 million asset for $500 a year? Where? In the capital markets. Nope, it's only in life insurance that you can do it. So you need to get your life insurance. $500. That's basically a beer budget, for a lot of us in this room. Life insurance or beer, make a decision. I'd go for the life insurance, okay? And do your family a favor and do yourself a favor in the process. So the major takeaway from this is 20, 30 years is going to go really fast. I promise you. Plan and stay on track. Do not worry about the money, okay? Shoot for the best school, for the best program, and don't let anybody get in your way. And if they do, go through them, go around them, but always be moving forward decisively in your career. And if you have people around you that love you and want to help you unconditionally, then bring them around you. If there are people around you that expect love, and a relationship or expect something for you conditionally, you need to cut those people loose. Because they're basically going to drag you down and they're going to waste your time. And they're going to give you bad advice. I've seen it constantly. People basically project their own messed up psychology onto you and project it onto you and expect you to live their messed up life. Okay? So don't do it. Don't get seduced by these individuals. The next model is the social learning and modeling. Now, you are extremely powerful individuals. You're already a model for a lot of people around you. It could be your siblings or your friends. We, based on, B.F. Skinner's work and Albert Bandura's work at Stanford University in social learning and self-efficacy, we end up modeling other individuals either conditionally or unconditionally. We model other people's behaviors, both negative and positively. Either we recognize it and we're doing it, or we don't even know that we're doing it. Because we're basically, in my view, humans are basically robots that just mimic, or monkeys that basically mimic other people's behaviors. So the question is, do you recognize that you're doing that? And if you do, what you need to do is to find models in individuals that you totally respect, identify the attributes in which they obtain, and create a portfolio of models and attributes to be able to construct a target or an ideal self. Now you are here, this is your actual self. You don't want to be students the rest of your life. I probably don't want to be a professor the rest of my life. But I know I want to be something, and I've targeted who I want to be. But the problem is I can't get from where I am right now to where I want to be instantaneously, so there's a cognitive dissonance, or there's a gap. How do you close that gap? You close the gap through self-efficacy. through the process of trying to exercise these attributes and mimic these positive models. And what's going to happen is you're going to fail in the process. And that's going to be your test. Because failure for you is going to be not a genetic predisposition, but the failure is just going to be a lack of information, a lack of perseverance and persistence. So failure is not genetic. It's just a lack of perseverance and persistence to get what you want. So if you can go through the self-efficacy process, you can reach your ideal position. There are two individuals I run into all the time. Professor Souza, I'm really into the math and science. I want to be a math and scientist. My parents are math and scientists. They were extremely successful. I want to be math and science. I have a genetic predisposition toward math and science. I don't like people. I don't want to be a manager. I'm not good at it, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to stay over here and I'm going to, take the rewards associated with that. Professor Souza, I'm a people person. I like to manage. I like to do the sales. I'm not really good at the math and the science. My parents were really good at sales and management. I have a genetic predisposition towards sales and management. I can be successful doing it. I'm going to go towards that. I'm going to leave the math and science to somebody else. That's not necessarily how the top people think. The top people recognize that they moved into one side or the other, either through environmental conditions and nurturing, and that they're weak at one area or the other, and they focus on remediating the other sides that they're weak at, and then become good at both, and become this hybrid individual. And if you look at the top individuals within these organizations, and you look at the top students within the top schools, they're good at both. They work at being good at both. And if you can be good at both, what happens is over time, you will reach a certain state of self-actualization and consciousness. And what will happen is you will walk into a room, and when you meet people, you will have a persona, personality, and a presence reflected by your dress to be able to communicate to these individuals instantaneously, not only the competencies that you have, but the power that you wield. Because you will then have charisma through the precision of your communication and your language. And if you have charisma and you can command the language of the communication, you will have the power of persuasion to be able to get people to do things that they otherwise would not want to do. Because people are not motivated by money after a certain point. They're motivated by relationships. They're motivated by individuals who have the competencies, okay? And they want to go with them. And you will end up being the model and models for other individuals, and they will be attracted to you, and they will come to you, and they will say, Jake, take me with you. I want to work with you. And then, or other people around you, your friends, your family, others. And then you will need to make a decision, a very existential decision, decisive decision, to decide if you're going to take them with you or not. And that's the saddest part of this whole thing, is you are not going to take people with you. You're going to feel sorry for them, but you're going to need to leave them behind. Because of some kind of, neuroses or psychoses or pathological behavior or other things, that you've noticed about them that you just can't risk your own career to take them with you. And that's the power of this model, and that's the power that you will wield, and you probably have that power right now. To be able to execute on all this stuff, you have to be extremely organized, and you got to be a master of your time. You have to be master of your time. And the first thing you need to do is to lay out a 5-year strategic plan, broken down by individual years, listing your goals and objectives, and rank them from high to low. And then update the 5-year plan every year to stay on track, to get to where you want to go, if you want to go there. Then you got to break this down into the first 3 years. That's going to be your tactical plan, and then you break up the tactical plan into 6 months, or basically 4-quarter increments, and start to put in the detail of the individual metrics and milestones that you need to achieve within those time periods. And then you need to have an operational plan, and this is the perfect time for this plan, because basically January is right around the corner, and you get yourself a calendar and you start putting in the critical milestone dates which you need to hit to be able to get to where you want to go, and start backing in to days and weeks that you need to block out and say no to people around you, because you need to get this stuff done so that you can meet those milestone dates decisively and right on the mark. And then you have to have your weekly plans totally laid out as far in advance as you can, because again, you don't have the time to waste time. And you'll know if you lay out your plans on a weekly and a daily basis by time slot, you'll know what times you need to block out and what times are available and how to basically move stuff around if you need to. What the beauty about this time management system is that the weekly, daily time cycle is universal, okay? We get up at 5. We can do anything we want between 5 and 8 o'clock in the morning. I know that sounds weird and probably stupid, but no, the most high-performance individuals get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're basically doing what they need to do by 5 o'clock. And they can do anything they want from 5 to 8. And then they can go do whatever they want, get to where they need to get by 8 to 9. And then they're working from 9 to 12. And they have whatever kind of break they want to do, or they can do whatever they want from 12 to 1. And then they work from 1 to 5. And then they go to wherever they need to go from 5 to 6, and they can do whatever they want from 6 to 11. So basically, to be able to achieve your objectives is not a time issue. It's not a time issue. Professor says, I don't have enough time. Baloney. You got plenty of time. You're just not organized. You got plenty of time. You're just not organized. You're not organized. And that was the only way, this was the only way that I could get the 2 undergraduates, the 5 master's degrees, the doctorate degree, and be able to teach for 20 years and be able to work for 25. It's the only way to do it. If you want to go there. Some people are like, screw it, I want a 9 to 5. Okay, so you guys are going to make a lot of money. Okay, the problem is that somebody's going to try to steal it. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It's going to be your parents, or your brother, or your uncle, your cousin, your business partner, your wife, your husband. Somebody's going to try to steal your stuff. Okay? The question is, do you even recognize that? You probably don't even recognize that. I'd say the majority of you think you're going to get the inheritance, either from the grandparents or the parents, and you're not even in the will. You're not even in the trust. You're not even on the bank accounts or the brokerage accounts. You're not even on the deed to the real estate, or as a beneficiary in the life insurance policy. So you're getting nothing right now. So you better get on those things and talk to your parents right now during the break and make sure that you're going to get the stuff that you think you're going to get, because if you don't, somebody's going to steal it, guaranteed, because it's money. Okay? And people are greedy, and greed motivates pathological behaviors. So what you got to do is you got to plan. Okay, so you guys are going to be socking away in the qualified pre-tax side about 25% of your wealth and 25% of your income on an annual basis. Put it into 401ks and IRAs and SEPs and defined benefit programs to basically accumulate wealth in a tax-deferred area. It's amazing, but you got to do it. But the problem is, at some point in time, you're going to make too much money, and you're going to be forced into the non-tax, non-qualified realm. That's when you're going to start plowing money into real estate, and businesses, and stocks, corporate bonds, mutual funds. You're going to be accumulating wealth in the after-tax realm. And then when you liquidate in the after-tax realm, you're going to have to pay capital gains. If you invest in real estate, you're going to have to pay not only capital gains, but recapture tax too. So you're going to be forced into this area. And you're going to have 50% of your wealth targeted to that area. But these businesses, these business interests, the real estate and stocks, are going to go through these wealth effects, okay? And your concentration will go from 50 to 70%. That's when you sell off 20% of the portfolio and move it down below the line into the safe after-tax realm, into municipal bonds, guaranteed annuities, and life insurance products to basically create the annuity that you need to not only live on at a very high standard of living, but also asset protect the assets, and then to be able to efficiently distribute those assets to your heirs effectively. Not only efficiently, but also tax effectively, tax efficiently. There are 2 realms, the risk management and the investment management. Under the risk management, you got to get the life insurance policies. The convertible term that you can convert as you make more money, $20,000 a year. I got $1 million life insurance policy. I converted it to whole life. I'm putting 20 grand into this thing, and it's accumulating cash value, tax-free in the policy, and I can borrow back on the cash value tax-free, and if something ever happens to me, the death benefit pays out, and if I'm underneath the estate tax ceiling, it goes to my heirs tax-free. So it's an extremely tax-efficient vehicle. Both the term, the cash value whole life, the variable universal. You guys are going to need long-term care insurance. You run it through your corporation so that the premiums are tax deductible for you and your wife, so that when you turn 80, 90 years old, your kids aren't taking care of you because you had to live with your kids. The insurance will pay out and you can live in a congregate care facility getting a $400 daily benefit so that you're not burning through all of your savings and then wiping out your kids' savings in the process, because you end up living until you're 100 years old in some convalescent facility for 20, 30 years. It's totally disastrous, but it's the solution. And then they're going to get disability insurance on you if you ever become disabled. They're going to get life insurance on you if you make it through underwriting. You got to get property casualty insurance, because if your building burns down or there's an earthquake, you don't have the income to pay the mortgage payment, and you're going to default on a loan, and the bank's going to take your property. You're going to need business and umbrella insurance, because if you're going to run a business or multiple businesses, they're going to be coming after you to try to get your money. And somebody starts messing with you, you call your attorneys, they come out from New York, and they basically take out the individual that was trying to take you out, and they basically take it out in the process. Then you got to go into the investment management side, the qualified side. Roll over your 401ks into self-directed IRAs. Roll them into variable annuities with guaranteed investment protection riders. So if you have all this wealth built in these, in this annuity, but if the market goes down, your retirement income goes down. But if you put in the guaranteed investment protection rider, when the market goes down, the insurance company compensates you, and you basically retain your principal. And you basically lift the exercise price in these 3 7-year long put options to basically lock in your wealth by using these financially engineered products backed by large financial institutions, particularly mutual insurance companies. And then guaranteed guaranteed future income annuities are awesome. You take this money, I give the insurance money $1 million at 50, at 70 years old, it'll give me $100,000 back per year for the rest of mine and my wife's life. I will never run out of money by doing it. And then you go into the non-qualified side, your brokerage account, you're going to put money into there, it's going to work, you're going to liquidate it, pay capital gains to send Jenny and Janie to college, to get your new car, to put a down payment on a house. You're going to be able to use these variable annuities over here. What's great is rich people love to plow a ton of money into these variable annuities because they can accumulate their wealth, asset protected and distributed efficiently, and there's no limit to the amount of money that they can put in. And they put money into these guaranteed future income annuities too. And what's great about it is, since they paid for the annuities, the after-tax money, there's a return of principal under the IRS code that basically states that 30% of the money that you receive is basically the return of principal. So $33,000 of the $100,000 that you receive is tax deductible. Lastly, you're going to be accumulating assets. Some of the assets that you accumulate, both let's say business or real estate interests, you're in partnership with these individuals, you can't put them into an irrevocable trust. They're going to be out here. You got a living trust, but they're totally exposed to taxation and other messed up structures. So let's say you are giving your kids all of these business and these real estate interests, and you pass away. Well, it initiates a tax consequence. It triggers a taxable event. If your kids don't have the money to pay the taxes, they got to liquidate these illiquid assets at a deep, deep discount. In a lot of cases, they don't have enough money to basically pay the taxes, so your parents left you a liability and not an asset. So this stuff's got to be structured now and make sure that it's set up correctly, or else you're looking at a liability, not an asset. And then when you turn 70, 80, 90 years old, you take your wholly owned shares of your businesses and your real estate, and you stick them in an irrevocable trust. So that when you pass away, all the assets go to your heirs at a stepped up basis, and they don't have to pay any taxes. But you're looking at personal and business loans and debt, and you may be looking at some consequences. So how do you extinguish that stuff? Well, basically, you take some of the cash flows, you set up an irrevocable life insurance trust, you use some of the cash flows to pay the premium, and when you pass away, the trust gets the death benefit, and the death benefit pays off the personal and the real estate debt and the taxation, and all this stuff basically goes to you, debt and tax-free. Awesome. I got like 1 minute. Okay. Taxes, taxes, taxes. I love taxes. Income taxes, 70%. State taxes, 10%. Capital gains, 20. Recapture tax on your real estate, 25. Transfers tax, 10. Retail sales, 10. I love taxes. I don't know about you, but I love it. Bring them on, more. Okay. Estate planning. Okay, I'm almost done. Asset protection. This is the most important thing that you need to do. Get a will with a medical directive in it. So that if something happens to you and you became vegetated and you're sitting in a hospital and it's blowing through all of your parents' money, that they can pull the plug. So you don't end up taking out everybody in the process. Be responsible, please. Get a will, get the medical directive in it. Okay, don't take down your family. Oh, I don't care, I'll be dead. That's just wrong. Living trusts, all these assets. If you have a living trust that circumvents probate and all the money gets distributed, basically to the people identified in the trust, circumventing probate. So you don't have government basically messing with you in the process. We talked about the irrevocable trust. The dynasty and the generation skipping trusts are two of my favorites. That's when you get the call from mom on Saturday morning when you're basically feeding your kids berries and waffles. And mom tells you that you're not getting any of the money from their estate, they're giving it all to the grandkids. Woo! Isn't that awesome? You might want to know about that. And then lastly, these charitable remainder trusts are extremely efficient structures to basically put appreciated assets within the trust and basically pull out all of the money pretty much tax-free, because then the asset upon death is going to go to the charity. So you're basically using the trust and the tax structures to be able to pull out all that money tax efficiently. And then lastly, intentionally defective trusts are really complex and they're used for certain family office and certain high net worth individuals and international family issues that have more complex or cross-country treaties that you need to do. I hope you guys enjoyed the entertainment. I hope you enjoyed the class. I will be here for you if you need any references, letters of recommendation. If you're serious about a job or an internship, work with me. I will coach you through the process. And then the thing that I like the most about teaching is I get to make friends with my students. And then hopefully those relationships become permanent relationships, because I'm like an old dog, really. I'm kind of like an old dog. You throw the dog out on the front porch in the pouring rain and the cold, and then the next day you thought you got rid of him, and you open the door and there's the dog, right? Cold and shivering, looking up at you with the big blue eyes, saying, where were you? And I'm here for you. Okay.
Thank you.